The Magnificent Seven of 1960 left behind one of the most iconic westerns ever made. But their real lives ended in ways far from heroic. Behind the dusty gunfights and unforgettable music lies a story of loss, decline, and endings that Hollywood rarely speaks about. Stay with us, because what happened to each member of this legendary cast will shock you more than any duel on screen. Number 1. Steve McQueen. In November of the year 1980, Steve McQueen died in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, following complications from surgery to remove tumors caused by mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer linked to asbestos exposure. He was only 50 years old, a shockingly young age for a man whose screen presence had seemed indestructible. The final months of his life were filled with desperation and experimental treatments, including unapproved operations that reflected his unwillingness to surrender. McQueen had built his image as the king of cool, the rebel who thrived in roles that required grit, style, and quiet intensity. His turn as Vin Tanner in The Magnificent Seven established him as a rising star, standing shoulder to shoulder with Yul Brynner and Charles Bronson. Yet even at the height of his fame, he carried private demons. Friends recalled his paranoia, his reliance on alcohol and drugs, and his volatile behavior on set. He demanded attention, often stealing scenes with subtle gestures, a tilt of the hat, or a deliberate pause that drew the eye. Behind the camera, his personal life was just as combustible. He grew up abandoned by his father and raised in reform schools, a past that left him restless and distrustful. Fame gave him money, cars, and women, but it never healed the wounds of his childhood. His marriages collapsed under the weight of jealousy and infidelity. He surrounded himself with fast machines, from motorcycles to race cars, chasing adrenaline as if speed could outpace the emptiness. By the late 1970s, his body betrayed him. The cancer grew rapidly, and though doctors warned there was little hope, McQueen pursued treatments that others called reckless. He traveled in secrecy to Mexico, where surgeons attempted a risky procedure. Hours later, he was gone, leaving the world stunned. News of his death spread quickly, and fans mourned a man who embodied rugged independence on screen but had lived with fear and frailty in private. Steve McQueen's legacy remains immense. From The Great Escape to Bullet, his performances captured a restless American spirit. His death, however, was not the fearless blaze of glory one might expect from Hollywood's ultimate loner. It was slow, painful, and deeply human. A reminder that even the toughest icons cannot escape mortality. Number 2. Charles Bronson. In August of the year 2003, Charles Bronson died in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 81. The official cause was pneumonia, complicated by Alzheimer's disease, a long and cruel decline that had slowly stripped away the fierce image audiences had cherished for decades. Once known as one of the toughest men on screen, he spent his final years in frailty and confusion, far removed from the hard-edged characters that defined his career. Bronson's presence in The Magnificent Seven as Bernardo O'Reilly marked him as a commanding figure even in a cast filled with rising legends. His weathered face, rugged frame, and piercing stare made him stand out among the group of hired gunmen. Audiences recognized in him a kind of authenticity, a man who looked as though he had survived hard labor and violence before ever stepping in front of a camera. That perception was not far from reality. Born into poverty in Pennsylvania, Bronson was the 11th of 15 children. He worked in the coal mines as a boy after his father died, laboring underground in brutal conditions that scarred his lungs and left him with a permanent toughness. His path to acting was unlikely, but once in Hollywood, his background became part of his mystique. He rarely smiled on screen, delivered few words, and carried himself like someone who had endured more than any script could demand. During the 1970s, he became an international star, leading action films and revenge thrillers that cemented his image as the quiet avenger. Death Wish turned him into a cultural symbol, both praised and criticized for its violent portrayal of vigilante justice. Off-screen, however, he was known for his guarded nature. He distrusted interviews, kept his private life tightly controlled, and allowed only glimpses of vulnerability. Those who knew him spoke of his devotion to family, particularly to his wife Jill Ireland, whose battle with cancer devastated him. As age caught up with him, Bronson withdrew from public life. The strong physique faded, his memory failed, and the man once feared on screen became dependent on others for care. When news of his death broke, fans mourned not only the end of an actor, but the closing chapter of a myth. His journey from coal miner to cinematic icon had been extraordinary, yet it ended quietly in a hospital room, a stark contrast to the explosive characters he had played. Charles Bronson's legacy rests on the power of silence, strength, and endurance, qualities that no illness could fully erase. Number 3. Yul Brynner. In October of the year 1985, Yul Brynner died in New York City after a long and public battle with lung cancer. He was 65 years old. Known for his commanding voice, bald head, and magnetic screen presence, Brynner had smoked heavily for decades and eventually admitted that his addiction had sealed his fate. In his final years, he recorded a haunting message, warning others against the very habit that had claimed his life. Brynner's role as Chris Adams in The Magnificent Seven solidified his place in cinema history. He was already famous from The King and I, a performance that had won him an Academy Award. But in the Western, he exuded the authority and charisma of a leader. His piercing stare and regal bearing set him apart from the other gunfighters, and audiences could not look away when he stepped into a scene. Behind the stoic mask, however, was a man who wrestled with insecurities and a craving for control. Colleagues remembered his insistence on being the center of attention. On the set of The Magnificent Seven, he famously clashed with Steve McQueen, resenting the younger actor's habit of stealing focus. The rivalry added tension to the production, but also enhanced the intensity of their performances. Brynner demanded perfection, whether in his acting, his personal relationships, or his appearance, and those close to him often found him difficult but unforgettable. His life off-screen was no less dramatic. Born in Russia, raised in hardship, and fluent in several languages, Brynner reinvented himself in America as a figure larger than life. He surrounded himself with glamour, romance, and travel, living as though the stage extended into his daily existence. His marriages were turbulent, his affairs legendary, and his sense of identity carefully constructed. Yet beneath the glamour, he was haunted by the knowledge that his health was failing. When cancer finally took him, his last message resonated across the world. In a television commercial aired after his death, he looked straight into the camera and said, "Now that I am gone, I tell you, do not smoke." That plea remains one of the most chilling celebrity farewells ever recorded. A moment of truth from a man who had lived in the spotlight. What are your thoughts on Brynner's final warning and the way his legacy was shaped by both strength and vulnerability? Number 4. James Coburn. In November of the year 2002, James Coburn died in Beverly Hills, California, after suffering a massive heart attack at the age of 74. His sudden passing shocked many who knew him as a man of vitality and resilience, someone who had endured decades of physical pain but always managed to return to the screen with remarkable energy. The heart failure came just as he was experiencing a career resurgence, making his death feel especially untimely. Coburn's role as Brit in The Magnificent Seven was unforgettable despite the limited dialogue. He played the knife expert with quiet menace, delivering one of the most iconic duels in the film without needing many words. His lean frame, steely gaze, and effortless cool set him apart, and audiences recognized a natural talent that could command attention even in silence. This ability to do more with less became a defining trait of his acting style. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Coburn thrived in action and spy films. Often cast as the tough but witty hero, he had the looks, the charm, and the physicality to compete with contemporaries like Sean Connery. Yet he carried a sense of rugged individuality that made him unique. Off-screen, however, he battled severe rheumatoid arthritis that nearly ended his career. At one point, he was in such pain that he could barely walk, and roles became scarce. Refusing to be defeated, Coburn turned to alternative therapies, exercise, and determination to manage his illness. Against the odds, he returned to acting, eventually earning an Academy Award for Affliction in the late 1990s. His acceptance speech revealed both humility and gratitude, a man who had survived long enough to finally be recognized by his peers. It was a triumphant moment that seemed to promise more great work to come. The triumph did not last long. Only a few years later, his heart gave out, cutting short the renewed chapter of his career. Friends and colleagues remembered him as generous, disciplined, and fiercely independent, qualities that mirrored the characters he brought to life. Fans mourned a performer who embodied strength even in weakness, and left behind a body of work that continues to inspire. James Coburn's story is one of endurance, struggle, and a final exit that arrived just as he had reclaimed his place in the spotlight. Number 5. Eli Wallach. In June of the year 2014, Eli Wallach died in New York City at the age of 98. The cause was natural, the quiet end of a man who had spent more than 6 decades shaping American film and theater. His passing marked the close of one of the longest and most varied careers of any actor from The Magnificent Seven, a career defined by versatility and the refusal to be typecast. Wallach played Calvera, the bandit leader in The Magnificent Seven, and his performance became one of the most memorable villain roles of the era. With sharp eyes, a wiry energy, and an unnerving mix of charm and menace, he gave the film its true heartbeat of danger. Though audiences knew him for this ruthless figure, Wallach himself was a trained stage actor who had studied under Lee Strasberg and thrived on complex character work. Beyond the Western, he appeared in a remarkable range of films, from spaghetti westerns like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to modern dramas and comedies. His ability to slip into any accent or persona earned him respect across the industry. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he never became a conventional leading man. Instead, he embraced the character actor's path, collecting hundreds of credits that stretched across genres and generations. In his personal life, Wallach was deeply committed to his wife, Anne Jackson, with whom he shared a marriage that lasted more than 6 decades. Their partnership extended to the stage, where they often performed together, a rare and enduring bond in the world of Hollywood. Friends described him as witty, generous, and tireless, a man who worked well into his 90s not out of necessity but out of love for the craft. When death finally came, it carried with it the weight of a full and accomplished life. Tributes poured in from fellow actors, directors, and critics who acknowledged his immeasurable contributions. His legacy rests not only on the famous villains he portrayed, but also on the countless supporting roles that elevated every project he joined. Eli Wallach's story stands as proof that greatness in Hollywood does not always belong to the biggest star, but often to the actor who disappears so completely into a role that the audience forgets the man behind it. Number 6. Robert Vaughn. In November of the year 2016, Robert Vaughn died in Ridgefield, Connecticut from acute leukemia at the age of 83. His death closed the chapter on a long career that had taken him from small supporting roles to international stardom and back again to the character parts that sustained him in later life. For audiences who had admired his charm and sophistication, the news was a sobering reminder of how quickly illness can strip away even the most enduring figures. Vaughn's portrayal of Lee in The Magnificent Seven gave him the chance to stand among an ensemble of powerful actors. His character was the gambler turned reluctant gunfighter, a man trying to reclaim his courage. Though less physically imposing than his co-stars, Vaughn delivered a performance of intelligence and vulnerability, showing a different shade of heroism in a story dominated by violence and bravado. His career truly flourished in the 1960s when he took on the role of Napoleon Solo in the television series The Man from UNCLE. That part transformed him into a household name, admired for his wit, good looks, and debonair style. Vaughn embraced the sudden fame, enjoying the glamour of international celebrity while also cultivating an image of intellectual seriousness. He pursued graduate studies in political science and never shied away from expressing his opinions about war, politics, and the responsibilities of Hollywood. Despite the heights of success, Vaughn's career had its fluctuations. The popularity of his television work eventually faded, and he reinvented himself as a guest star, appearing in countless series and films across decades. His voice became familiar in commercials, documentaries, and political causes. He was known for his professionalism and his ability to bring polish and gravitas to even the smallest roles. In his private life, Vaughn was devoted to his wife and children. Friends remembered him as cultured, articulate, and fiercely loyal. When leukemia struck, he continued to work as long as he could, refusing to let illness define his final years. His passing was mourned by fans who remembered him not only as the stylish spy of the 1960s, but also as a versatile actor whose career spanned more than half a century. Robert Vaughn left behind the legacy of a performer who balanced intellect and charisma, proving that true star power lies in both presence and persistence. Number 7. Horst Buchholz. In March of the year 2003, Horst Buchholz died in Berlin, Germany, after developing pneumonia while recovering from hip surgery. He was 69 years old, and his death came as a surprise to many who remembered him as the youngest and most vibrant member of the Magnificent Seven. The actor, once hailed as the German James Dean, had lived a career marked by promise, turbulence, and a struggle to maintain stardom beyond his early triumphs. Buchholz played Chico, the hot-headed young gunfighter who longs to prove himself among hardened men. His performance brought energy and impulsive charm to the ensemble, creating a character who grows from reckless bravado into unexpected maturity. For many viewers, Chico represented youthful ambition and vulnerability, qualities that made him both endearing and tragic. Within the story, his role in the Western was a breakthrough, opening the doors of Hollywood to a European actor with striking looks and restless spirit. In his native Germany and across Europe, Buchholz had already earned fame through films like Tiger Bay. His combination of brooding intensity and youthful rebellion drew comparisons to James Dean, a label that both boosted his image and created expectations he could never fully escape. He pursued international work, appearing in major productions such as 1, 2, 3, directed by Billy Wilder. Yet the balance between European cinema and Hollywood proved difficult to maintain. As years passed, his career shifted away from leading roles. He remained active in film, theater, and television, but his star power dimmed compared to contemporaries. He continued to work steadily, though, adapting to character roles and lending his voice to German dubbing of animated films, including a role in Disney's The Incredibles. Off-screen, Buchholz was known for his restless personality, his commitment to his craft, and later in life his openness about his bisexuality, a revelation that challenged the image of the matinee idol he had once embodied. His death at 69 cut short a life that had weathered both glamour and hardship. Fans in Germany and abroad mourned the loss of an actor who had represented post-war European cinema's youthful defiance. Horst Buchholz may not have achieved the enduring Hollywood fame of some of his co-stars, but his performance as Chico ensured his place in cinematic history, a lasting reminder of ambition, spirit, and the fragility of promise. Number 8. Brad Dexter. In December of the year 2002, Brad Dexter died in Rancho Mirage, California, at the age of 85 after suffering from emphysema. His passing went largely unnoticed by the wider public. Yet within Hollywood circles, he was remembered as a loyal friend, a steady character actor, and a man whose life contained more intrigue than many of his film roles. Though his career never reached the stardom of his Magnificent Seven co-stars, his story was full of unexpected turns. Dexter played Harry Luck, the gunfighter driven by greed and a belief that there must be gold hidden somewhere in the Mexican village. His performance gave the film one of its more cynical voices, a sharp contrast to the nobility of the other characters. While not the most glamorous of roles, it showcased his ability to inhabit men of questionable morals and hard edges, a talent that kept him working steadily through the 1950s and 60s. Off-screen, Dexter's reputation grew less from his acting and more from his connections. He became known as a close friend of Frank Sinatra, with whom he shared business ventures and personal loyalty. That friendship placed him at the heart of Hollywood's inner circles, exposing him to both opportunity and danger. In one famous incident, Dexter saved Sinatra from drowning during a Hawaiian vacation, an act that sealed their bond for life and made him part of Hollywood lore. His career in film expanded beyond acting. He took on producing, involving himself in international projects that broadened his reach but did not always bring financial success. His personal life included several marriages and a reputation for toughness, the kind of man others hesitated to cross. Though never a marquee star, Dexter embodied the working actor's path, carving out a career built on grit rather than glamour. In his later years, emphysema weakened his body, the long-term result of heavy smoking and hard living. By the time of his death, he was far removed from the spotlight. Yet his legacy remained with those who valued character actors and the loyalty he showed to his friend. Brad Dexter's life illustrates how even in the shadows of greater fame, a man can leave behind stories worth remembering. What do you think about the way loyalty and personal bonds shaped Dexter's legacy compared to the more glamorous careers of his co-stars? Number 9. Whit Bissell. In March of the year 1996, Whit Bissell died in Woodland Hills, California, from complications related to Parkinson's disease at the age of 86. His death marked the end of a long and prolific career in which he became one of Hollywood's most recognizable supporting actors. Known more for his steady presence than for leading roles, He left behind hundreds of performances across film and television that shaped the backdrop of American entertainment for nearly half a century. Bissell appeared in The Magnificent Seven as Chamley, the Undertaker who delivers one of the film's most chilling lines about burying men for $8. Though his role was brief, it carried weight, setting the tone for the harsh realities of life and death in the story. He had a gift for bringing depth to even the smallest parts, and audiences remembered his face long after the credits rolled. His career stretched back to the 1940s, where he quickly became a reliable character actor. He specialized in playing doctors, military officers, and authority figures, roles that called for a blend of precision and believability. Classic science fiction fans recall him from The Time Machine and Creature from the Black Lagoon, while television audiences saw him in countless guest appearances on shows ranging from Perry Mason to The Twilight Zone. His versatility kept him constantly in demand, even if it never brought him the fame of his co-stars. Beyond acting, Bissell also served the entertainment industry in leadership positions. He was active in the Screen Actors Guild, advocating for the rights of working actors, and his colleagues respected him for his professionalism and integrity. Off-screen, he was described as warm, approachable, and devoted to his family, a contrast to the stern figures he so often portrayed on screen. By the final decade of his life, Parkinson's disease had weakened him and forced him into retirement. His death in 1996 was noted with respect by the industry, which recognized the sheer breadth of his contributions. While he may not have been a household name, Whit Bissell represented the backbone of Hollywood's golden years, the kind of actor whose consistency allowed stars to shine. His legacy endures in the countless films and series where his steady presence added credibility and texture to the story. Number 10. Vladimir Sokolov. In February of the year 1962, Vladimir Sokolov died in West Hollywood, California, at the age of 72. The cause was a stroke, a sudden end to a career that had spanned continents and decades. His passing came less than 2 years after audiences saw him in The Magnificent Seven, where his performance gave the story its moral center. For a man who had fled political turmoil and reinvented himself multiple times, his death in quiet California marked the close of a remarkable journey. Sokolov played the old man of the village, the character who persuades his people to seek help from the gunfighters. With his weathered face and weary voice, he conveyed dignity, sorrow, and resilience, qualities that made his role unforgettable despite limited screen time. His presence lent the film an authenticity rooted in experience, as if he carried the weight of many lifetimes in his eyes. Born in Moscow in 1899, Sokolov trained at the Moscow Art Theater before the upheavals of revolution pushed him into exile. He worked in Germany, then in France, establishing himself as a respected stage actor. With the rise of the Nazis, he fled once again, eventually settling in the United States. Hollywood welcomed him as a versatile performer who could embody characters of many nationalities, from peasants and professors to mystics and patriarchs. During the 1930s and 40s, he appeared in films such as For Whom the Bell Tolls and The Life of Emile Zola, gaining a reputation for reliability. Though typecast as the wise old man or the foreign sage, he brought sincerity and depth to each role. He became one of those actors whose face was instantly familiar, even if audiences did not always know his name. His dedication to craft allowed him to navigate the uncertainties of exile and build a lasting career in a new world. By the early 1960s, his health had begun to decline. The stroke that ended his life deprived Hollywood of a character actor whose path reflected the upheavals of the 20th century. His legacy remains in the quiet strength he brought to his roles, especially in The Magnificent Seven, where his performance symbolized hope against despair. Vladimir Sokolov's story is one of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of art across borders and hardships. Number 11. Rosinda Monteros. In December of the year 2018, Rosinda Monteros died in Mexico City at the age of 83. The cause was complications from cancer, which she had battled quietly in her final years. Her death closed the chapter on one of Mexico's most enduring actresses, a performer who had carried her culture and beauty onto international screens but who remained deeply connected to her homeland. Monteros played Petra in The Magnificent Seven, the young woman who befriends and eventually falls in love with Horst Buchholz's character Chico. Her role brought a touch of innocence and tenderness to a film otherwise dominated by men, gunfights, and violence. With her expressive eyes and graceful presence, she provided the story with emotional depth, reminding audiences that life in the village was not only about survival but also about love and human connection. Born in Veracruz in 1935, Monteros trained as a dancer before finding her path in acting. She became part of Mexico's golden age of cinema, starring in films that highlighted both her striking looks and her dramatic ability. Hollywood came calling in the late 1950s, and though her career there was brief, her part in The Magnificent Seven ensured her place in international film history. She represented a rare female perspective in a story told almost entirely through male voices. Throughout her career in Mexico, she worked in both film and theater, taking on roles that emphasized her versatility. Monteros was admired not only for her talent but also for her dedication to Mexican culture. She collaborated with leading directors of her time and became a recognizable face in productions that reached audiences far beyond her country. While she never pursued the Hollywood spotlight as aggressively as some of her co-stars, she found stability and fulfillment in her national cinema, where her contributions were celebrated. Her final years were marked by illness, but she remained respected and beloved in artistic circles. When her death was announced in 2018, tributes came from across Mexico, remembering her as a pioneer who had carried Mexican artistry to global audiences. Rosenda Monteros' legacy is not only as the young woman of the Magnificent Seven, but as a bridge between cultures, an actress who showed that strength and tenderness could coexist in a single performance. Her story reflects the enduring pride of Mexican cinema and the grace with which she lived her life. Number 12. Jorge Martinez de Hoyos. In May of the year 2012, Jorge Martinez de Hoyos died in Mexico City at the age of 89. The cause was complications related to lung disease, which had slowly weakened him in the last years of his life. His death was noted with respect in Mexico, where he had been a prominent figure in film and television for decades, a performer who balanced character roles with cultural pride. Martinez de Hoyos appeared in The Magnificent Seven as Hilario, one of the humble farmers who hires the gunfighters to defend the village. His character reflected quiet courage and the desperation of ordinary men who had no choice but to trust strangers with their survival. Though not a leading role, his presence added authenticity to the film, grounding the story in the reality of rural Mexico and giving voice to the villagers whose lives hung in the balance. Born in Mexico City in 1920, he began his career in national theater before moving into cinema during the 1940s. He built a reputation as a dependable character actor, appearing in a wide range of Mexican films that captured the shifting identity of the nation's culture. His serious demeanor and thoughtful delivery made him a natural fit for roles that required gravitas, from priests and judges to fathers and community leaders. Internationally, he occasionally appeared in Hollywood productions, but he always returned to Mexican cinema and television as his foundation. He became a familiar face to audiences across Latin America, taking part in historical dramas, soap operas, and films that explored social themes. His versatility allowed him to navigate both popular entertainment and more artistic projects, giving him a long career that stretched across generations. In his later years, Martinez de Hoyos became a mentor figure, admired by younger actors who saw him as a symbol of professionalism and integrity. Though illness eventually forced him into retirement, he remained an honored figure in the Mexican entertainment community. When he passed in 2012, colleagues and fans paid tribute to his contributions and the dignity he brought to every role. Jorge Martinez de Hoyos may not have achieved international stardom, but his life's work reflected the strength of Mexican cinema and the quiet power of those who represent their culture with pride and consistency. His role in The Magnificent Seven endures as part of a film that continues to resonate across borders. Number 13. Robert J. Wilke. In March of the year 1989, Robert J. Wilke died in Los Angeles, California, from a heart attack at the age of 78. His death ended the life of one of Hollywood's most familiar tough men, an actor whose face was instantly recognizable, even if his name was not always remembered. For decades, he had played villains, gunfighters, and menacing figures, shaping the way audiences viewed the archetypal Western antagonist. Wilke appeared in The Magnificent Seven as Wallace, one of the gunmen recruited early in the story. Though his part was not large, his presence contributed to the ensemble's rough-edged authenticity. With his tall frame, piercing glare, and gravelly voice, he carried the image of a man accustomed to violence, and casting directors throughout his career relied on him for exactly that impression. Born in Cincinnati in 1914, Wilke began his career as a stuntman before moving into acting. His background in physical performance made him a natural for westerns, where he could ride horses, perform fight scenes, and embody the physical demands of the genre. He soon became typecast as the heavy, appearing in classics such as High Noon, where he stood among the silent gunmen waiting for Gary Cooper at the train station. Though rarely the star, his characters added real danger to the stories. Beyond westerns, Wilke worked across genres, appearing in films like The Far Country and television shows such as Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and The Virginian. He also appeared in sports dramas, including The Cincinnati Kid, where his versatile toughness translated well outside the frontier setting. Off-screen, Wilke was known as an avid golfer, competing in celebrity tournaments and enjoying a reputation as one of Hollywood's most skilled players in the sport. By the 1980s, his health began to decline, and his career slowed after decades of constant work. When his heart finally gave out in 1989, the industry remembered him as one of the quintessential supporting players of the Western era. Though he never achieved leading man fame, his contributions defined the atmosphere of countless classics. Robert J. Wilke's legacy endures in the countless Western landscapes where his shadow still lingers, a reminder of the villains who made the heroes shine brighter. Thank you for staying with this story. If you enjoy revisiting the legends and their untold endings, do not forget to subscribe for more. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.